Hello everyone, I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm KOMETTE, and welcome to another Human Echoes movie review. We're really excited about this one. It just came out a couple hours ago.
Yeah, we are at the basic Thursday showing for The Invisible Man, and this is one where I saw a couple trailers and I wasn't fully convinced. I just wasn't super excited about it, but I wasn't against the movie. It's one of those where we've seen a lot of Invisible Mans in the past, like we saw The Hollow Man, we've seen...
Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon, always loved the Kevin Bacon. But then we had this one, and this is written by someone who actually is one of my favorite writers, despite being a little bit more on the sloppy horror side a lot of times. Like, he wrote Insidious, he wrote Saw. Like, a lot of times it's body horror. And this was done by Leigh Whannell, and this is his version where he wrote, directed, and did the screenplay. Like, he's grand poobah over every aspect of this film.
I was actually really excited for this because there's not a whole lot of movies that touch on, this type of abused victim, and I was really excited to see it. It was funny. Our coworker was like, "This doesn't seem like a horror movie," and I was like, "Oh, really? A girl who finally runs away from her abuser, and then he finds a way to stalk her and make her feel crazy? That doesn't sound like a horror movie, because that sounds horrible."
And in some of the most brutal gaslighting that I've ever seen on film,
Gaslighting is a lot of people don't know what that is.
Gaslighting is whenever you're trying to convince someone else that they're crazy. It comes from a 1930s movie called Gaslighting.
No, so what happens is back then they actually had gas lights, and little by little, every single day, he was turning down the dimness of the lights across the entire house, and she'd be like, "It's darker in here." He'd be like, "You're crazy." "No, it's not. Yes. You're actually going crazy." So he was doing things to actually make her feel like she was mentally unstable.
And
that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and this movie does it better than most I've ever seen as far as being on this topic. It's also one of the most impactful views of domestic violence I've seen. She was saying there's not a lot of movies that have domestic violence. I think there's a fair amount, but you see a lot of them on the Lifetime channel, and they're not very good. Those are the types of movie where her getting a black eye is character development instead of actually worrying about making a dynamic character. Mm-hmm. And we've got Elisabeth Moss here, and she's doing an excellent job. She might seem a little less developed because they didn't spend a lot of time on her backstory, but I think that would have slowed down the pacing and made it something that it really didn't have to be.
I kind of like that. The first 20 minutes of this movie was so anxiety-ridden, and we'll get into this during our rubric, but the sound editing on it was incredible, especially in the first 20 minutes of that movie.
Yeah, and I have problems with the sound editing in the second half of this movie, where things are just so high-pitched, like it's just someone turns on a sink and it sounds like there's a hurricane for a second. In the first part of the movie, whenever they're trying to show that she's being sneaky and trying to be completely stealthy, it makes sense that everything would be that much louder. Like, she kicks a dog bowl and our seats were literally vibrating because we were in a nice XD theater. It's like IMAX, really good sound. And that was very intense. I would say that the first 15-20 of this movie was completely suffocating.
It was so good, and I could only imagine being in that situation. And I never had to sneak out of my house at night, but I could, when you're trying to be quiet and everything sounds super loud, that was such a well done piece of editing and directing, I think, on the first part of it.
Yeah, and as someone who's had family members in situations where they've literally had to run for their lives from a significant other, and that person spent 30 years in jail, that's the type of thing that it kept ringing for me, is I've only heard parts and pieces of what they had to go through, and to see just the amount of anxiety plus the level of determination it would take to be able to leave that situation. I know everybody's like, "Oh, just leave, just leave, just leave." It's not like that with abusive situations, and this movie represents that well. If they didn't have an invisible man suit and you made this into just a movie about an ex trying to get revenge, it still would have been a good movie.
Yeah,
the invisible man aspect turned this into a genre movie that ended up being really cool because of some technical things it was able to pull off, but it didn't even need that to be well written.
I agree with that. The acting in it and the writing, and just it was a well-rounded story. Albeit there was some parts that were a bit radical that I was like, okay. But it's a Hollywood movie. What do you really expect?
Yeah. And one thing that Leigh Whannell's always done well, in my opinion, is he's worked violence into movies in ways that we don't get to see that often. And you saw that with his last movie, I believe it was called Upgrade, where it's just some of this really brutal, high-impact fighting where they're removing frames so it seems like things are going faster than they are. And there's a lot of that here. But the choreography between people fighting somebody who's invisible would have been very technically difficult, and it looked great.
It did look really, really good. I was looking, and I think that's one of my favorite things about this movie is that you're always looking to try to see if there's any sort of clue about if she's really alone, if there's somebody with her, and all of that stuff. And I really appreciate that in a movie.
Yeah.
When you're just like, your eyes are literally glued to the screen. Glued.
And one of the things that I liked most about this as well is that the supporting cast felt like they were alive, felt like they were actually a big part of this world. And once again, like, Leigh Whannell showed us the relationship that James had with his daughter, like the cop guy with his daughter. And we got to see them just interacting. We got to see a little bit of his anxieties about her going to college, just small things that made it feel real without being heavy-handed exposition where they just stop everything and give like an info dump. We don't need to know that. We need to see them interact in a compelling way. And this movie used that subtlety to a great degree. All right, and so on to the rubric. As always, our first thing is directing, which also covers sound editing. Like, did they do everything that they wanted to do as a director for this film?
So I actually gave this a 1. I thought that the sound editing, I actually didn't have the problems that Tony did in the second half because I feel like it was really amped up, and I think we needed to get on the same level as the movie. I loved the sound editing in the first half of the movie when you're trying to listen for things that aren't there. The first 20 minutes when she's just trying to be so quiet and everything, you can literally hear everything.
Yeah.
I loved that.
It sounds like you let me argue out of a point that it deserves, so you might want to change that to the normal score.
No. A part of the directing also is looking for him in each frame. I like that. I wish he would have given a little bit more cues about whether or not somebody was there.
Yeah, even if it would have been an audio cue, because we know he's in the room a lot of times, or we're made to believe that he's in the room most of these times whenever she's talking about it. I would have liked to have seen some little indicator, even if it's just a slight breath, even if it's like just a shifting or something like that. We didn't need to see the suit like undo for a second, just a little bit more, because I was scouring all the edges looking for something.
I was too, like, intensely. But, like, when things started gearing up, you could definitely, it was very obvious when he was around, and they did a directing that made it obvious that he was around. I just wish that there was just a little bit more subtlety in some of the scenes.
Yeah, and I felt that it was a little bit predictable for parts of it, so it lost a little bit there. It did have one decent, like, twist moment, and I would say that was well-earned and it was good, but I felt like you could have kind of picked the story beats by about 15-20 minutes in the movie how things were going to go down. So it's not giving us something brand new and original, it's just telling it in a really compelling way. So I gave it a 1.5.
Yeah, I gave it a 1. So, yeah. The next one is acting. I gotta say that Elizabeth Moss knocked it out of the fucking park. She did so good.
She also is like the type of person that, like, whenever she's alone in a room, might look more miserable than any other person on the planet sometimes. Like,
and they made her look miserable,
too. They channeled that hard. And she's got great range as an actress. Like, I've been watching her since Mad Men.
I was going to say, she was in Mad Men, right?
Yeah, and she's big in Handmaid's Tale, all those sorts of things. Like, she was
in Us, which was another horror movie that we like a lot, albeit it's a small part, but she was hilarious in that part.
It was funny. Like, so she did a fantastic job. James, the cop, I did not get his name. I'll put it down here. I thought he did well. Like, the supporting people actually felt supportive in a way that you would hope somebody going through domestic violence would have that support system.
Other than the sister.
Sister was cold.
Writing was really strange. And I actually got mad at her a lot of times during the movie, being like, really?
Yeah, it seemed like she would have been able to tell that something was up.
Yeah, or like, why? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know if that was the acting or if that was just bad. Like, just it didn't quite work on the screenplay.
Yeah, exactly. I gave it a 2 for acting.
Yeah, her performance lifted it up so much that a minor character being a little off didn't slow it down for me.
Yeah, like I didn't even. Yeah. She did so good. Did you give it a 2 also?
I gave it a 2 for acting.
Okay, perfect. And then this one is I think my favorite category is atmosphere. This is, to me, like if it's a horror movie, is it the creep factor? And I liked the atmosphere of this movie.
I did too. Like the atmosphere in this, it's San Francisco, it's gloomy, it's like the whole time it sets a mood. And the mood is a little bit like a gray tone, a little bit like just down there. And I thought that Leigh Whannell was able to do a great job of enhancing his script by making just everything feel like it was perfectly crafted for this film. And like it's nice seeing Blumhouse actually put a little bit more money into these, so we don't just get like the one location. Like we saw a bunch of different houses, we saw hospitals, we saw all sorts of other things, and nothing felt out of place with this movie as far as atmosphere. It felt creepy. It wasn't outright scary, but it definitely felt creepy. Although it sounded like you actually heard some people freaking out about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I really liked the atmosphere of this because when it needed to like gear up and be really anxiety driven, you felt the anxiety of it. But the moments when everybody was happy and stuff, I found myself smiling like with the family, and it was fun. And I feel like that has to do with the atmosphere, also with the cinematography and whatnot. It shifts gears without you really realizing it, and I think that's really key. So when I left the theater, I used the restroom, and I don't know if they were a teenager, I think they were younger than I was, but they were talking about the movie. They had seen the movie that we had just seen, and they were like, oh my god, it was so scary. And one of the girls is like, yeah, it's so scary that I think that it could like happen to me. And the other girl's like, yeah, really? And it was just, I thought that was hilarious. So I think this is going to be a popular movie. Definitely worth a watch,
Yeah.
for sure.
And when we walked into the theater, it was barren.
Nobody was there.
And then, like, it started to fill in a little bit. It's a Thursday night random horror movie.
7
We'll
o'clock
see
at
how it
night.
does. I have a feeling that this wasn't a massive budget. It was just a good budget, so it'll probably make some good money.
I gave it a 2 for atmosphere.
I give it a 2 as well. The next category is rewatchability. And what did you think for this one?
I actually gave it a 0 for rewatchability. I mean, it's not that I don't like this movie. I actually really did. But when I put the rewatchability, it's like a movie that I want to watch again immediately so I can see all the niches and see if other characters like do any sort of, what's the word called? Foreshadowing, and if I can predict anything. And even though this movie is great, I don't think it has that. I want to watch it immediately again.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of the things that were foreshadowed were so obvious that you didn't really need that. Like, you see the knife disappear, you see her buy a ladder, so you know it's going to be, like, in a scene somewhere else. There's a lot of things where it follows very strong conventional writing where you're not going to mention something if it's not important, and that's fine, but it didn't make for a movie that's going to be like, oh my god, I have to rewatch every little scene, which kind of surprised me because I was expecting to have a movie about an invisible man and more things to look for and notice. And we talked about that a little bit before.
And it's possible that we are misreading that and there's like tons of subtle stuff. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Did you see all the subtle?
I didn't feel like it was subtle enough. I would rewatch it specifically for like some of the fight sequences. Like watching Elizabeth Moss struggle against an invisible person in the kitchen was so well done that I was trying to figure out how they would have accomplished that.
Right? I guess I didn't even think about that.
So like it's not for the subtle aspects, it's for the technical. The hallway fight scene with all these guards, things like that are so well done that's the reason why I gave that a 1. It's not something I'm in a rush to go see. Definitely not going to go in theaters again, but there might be a time where I take a look back.
Yeah, I gave it a 0 for rewatchability.
And the most important question, the one that should probably be weighted higher, did you like it?
Okay, so I thought that this was a perfect mix of kind of like a ghost movie and a slasher, like scary person in my house movie, because there was some great, almost paranormal moments, but you know it's obviously not paranormal because there's somebody in the room. But I liked that a lot. There's not a lot of movies that can pull that off, that same feeling for me. The first Paranormal Activity did it, and this one kind of did it. I gave it a 2 for did I like it.
I gave this one a 2 as well. And speaking to the feel of a ghost thing, I'm pretty sure Leigh Whannell was going for that, because there are 3 instances where you have like a figure in the dark doing something that actually isn't like the Invisible Man. You've got a mannequin the first time. A few times whenever she's walking through a house, you see like a perfectly draped over like piece of furniture that's meant to look like the old conventional like sheet over ghost.
Yeah.
Things like that. So like he was putting out that vibe for sure. And
like the sound of the sheet, like there was some great stuff would make you almost think if you just saw that part, it'd be like, oh, this is a ghost movie. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And since it's about a man that supposedly killed himself, it's fun to like get that ghost vibe.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that. That would have been kind of a clever thing. Anyways.
Yeah, I feel like there could be it might even exist out there as like a gaslighting movie where you don't get like the huge like he's still alive reveal, the Scooby-Doo type thing. Like it was fun, and I gave this a 2 because I had so much fun with it. It's not going to be the deepest movie you ever see. That's why the rewatchability is lower. But as far as a like springtime popcorn movie, it's
go see
really
with your
fun.
girlfriends or your girlfriend. Like, this is a great...
all those poly couples out there.
Well, I was thinking like me and my girlfriends, like the girls that I saw in the toilet, not toilet, that's not what we call it, bathroom. In the bathroom, like that would be, it's a fun movie to go see with your peeps.
Yeah, and get a little bit of a scare on, get a good compelling story, and just be done with it. Like, not everything has to be like a heavy-hitting blockbuster. Nope. Just enjoy this one for what it is, and I think you guys will greatly appreciate it.
What's your total score? Mine was a 7 out of 10, which is actually very, very high for it being as a kind of junk food movie as it is. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and I think mine was a 7.5 out of 10. There was a half point in there somewhere. Yeah. So, like...
What's your scores? If you were to score it on a 2-point system for all of ours, what did you get? Show us in the comments below.
Also, tell us about some movies that you want us to check out. Check out patreon.com/Human Echoes if you enjoy this. But most of all, hit that like button, hit the bell button, share it with a friend. All those free things that you guys can do amazing things for us. We love you all, and we will see you with more reviews, more 5 facts, more drinking games, all sorts of other things coming up.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.